Hi, I'm Kevin. Welcome to this episode of Windshield Time. You know, we as humans are hardwired for two things: connection and survival. Connection draws us toward intimacy, while survival keeps us alive. Most of the time, these two instincts work beautifully together. But when our experience has taught us that intimacy carries the risk of rejection, or abandonment, or betrayal, or shame, they begin to pull against one another. We long to be deeply known, yet we instinctively protect ourselves from the very vulnerability that genuine intimacy requires. Much of our lives is spent trying to resolve this tension. Sometimes we do so by constructing what I have come to think of as a safe hiding place. Other times, far more rarely, we participate in creating something altogether different, a secure container. The difference changes everything. When intimacy feels frightening, we don't always retreat into isolation. Sometimes we retreat into intensity. Chemistry is perhaps the most familiar example, but it's hardly the only one. We may become deeply bonded through shared suffering, a common mission, intellectual resonance, spiritual exploration, or even commiseration over life's hardships. None of these are inherently unhealthy. In fact, they can be profoundly beautiful. The question isn't the nature of the bond. The question is what the bond allows us to avoid. If a relationship permits us to feel deeply connected while quietly concealing our own hearts, it may become less a place of intimacy than a remarkably comfortable place to hide. And so we discover an extraordinary substitute. We become willing to reveal every inch of our body while hiding in an attempt to protect that one precious thing we most long to share, our heart. We cloak the heart even as we remove our clothing. Often another person quietly, and perhaps gratefully, accepts exactly that arrangement. Not because either of us consciously intends deception, but because they too are concealing the very place where intimacy actually lives. An unspoken arrangement quietly emerges. You can be safe with me because I won't probe, I won't push, I won't ask you to reveal your messiness, as long as you don't ask me to reveal mine. And indeed, that can feel safe. We may spend months, sometimes years, sharing our bodies while carefully concealing our hearts, hoping to remain distracted long enough to ignore a painful truth. Although fully unclothed, we remain neither truly seen nor truly known. Just because we've been naked before another person does not mean we've been seen. We mistake exposure for vulnerability. We mistake intensity for intimacy. And because intensity feels so alive, we often fail to notice what is quietly missing. Intensity creates powerful moments. Intimacy creates enduring safety. These are not the same thing. Counterfeits rarely announce themselves. They borrow the language of the genuine. Intensity speaks in the language of intimacy. Secrecy speaks in the language of privacy. Certainty speaks in the language of clarity. The closer the imitation, the more easily we mistake one for the other. And the emotional aftermath is often confusing. After the exhilaration fades, many of us experience a quiet loneliness that we cannot quite explain. We wonder why something that felt so connecting leaves us feeling so unseen. So we search for another experience, another relationship, another conversation, another emotional high. Eventually, if we never examine the architecture itself, we may find ourselves empty, lying in the emotional gutter, wondering why nothing ever seems to satisfy the longing beneath it all. Perhaps the problem never was vulnerability. Perhaps it was the absence of a place sturdy enough to welcome it. A safe hiding place can offer companionship, affection, sex, chemistry, intensity, familiarity, loyalty, even love. But if I can remain concealed within it, it cannot provide the very thing I may believe I am seeking: intimacy. Because intimacy ultimately requires that somebody actually be there to be intimate with. Not the performed self, not the protected self, not the carefully curated self. Me. Intimacy requires authenticity. Authenticity requires vulnerability. And vulnerability means being willing to live, not recklessly, not without boundaries, but in the bright light of day. The purpose of a secure container isn't to protect us from vulnerability. It's to make vulnerability, and therefore authenticity, possible. A secure container is not built by perfect people. It's built through authenticity. Authenticity invites vulnerability. Vulnerability makes honesty possible. Honesty nurtures integrity. Integrity expressed consistently becomes trust. And trust, over time, strengthens the very container that made authenticity possible in the first place. It becomes a virtuous cycle. Privacy no longer needs to serve concealment. It can become stewardship. Boundaries need not keep people out. They can create a space where truth can emerge. One of the hidden costs of a safe hiding place is the extraordinary amount of energy it requires to maintain it. You have to manage what is disclosed, what is concealed, what version of yourself is presented, what questions you hope you've never asked, what feelings you quietly walk away from. It's exhausting. Energy spent maintaining an illusion is energy unavailable for living. Reality requires no maintenance. Falsehood requires constant maintenance. Concealment is extractive. Congruence is regenerative. And perhaps that's why honesty, while sometimes difficult, can so often feel strangely peaceful. Not because it's comfortable, because there's finally nothing left to maintain. The energy once spent protecting an illusion becomes available for something far more life-giving: presence, creativity, curiosity, love, life. Perhaps this is why drama so often accompanies concealment. Drama is often the very interest we pay on concealment. Eventually, the bill comes due. When enough pressure builds, the architectures we built to protect ourselves can no longer bear their own weight. And yet, this need not be tragic. Sometimes collapse is simply the beginning of construction. The safe hiding place has served its purpose. Now something stronger can be built. The secure container is not a place where we never experience fear. It's a place where connection and survival no longer work against one another. They begin working together. Does this relationship provide me a place to hide, or a sufficiently secure container in which I can show up authentically? Because in the end, what we are longing for is not merely to be loved, it's to be deeply known. To be recognized is to experience being known at a depth that precedes our biography. A secure container doesn't give us somewhere better to hide. It gives us somewhere secure enough to step into the bright light of day. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Kevin Rubel, the Practical Iconoclast, and this is Windshield Time, where you come to get your answers questioned. If today's reflection resonates with you in some way, I'd love to have you join me again on this journey called Authentic Life.